Isla's POV today marked a year since Jason and I officially became a couple. It felt surreal. I had never been this serious about anyone. Jason was charming, attentive, and supportive, or so I thought. He owned a quaint cafe near my college, where I worked part-time to make ends meet. The cafe wasn't just a workplace for me, it felt like a second home, mostly because Jason was there. To celebrate our anniversary, I decided to surprise him with a gift. After weeks of saving from my modest earnings, I finally bought him a watch that I thought he'd love. It wasn't fancy, but it was meaningful. Every time he checked the time, he'd think of me. At least, that's what I hoped. The salesgirl behind the counter looked at me with a mixture of pity and amusement as I handed her my hard-earned cash. "You're really buying this for someone?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," I said, feeling a bit self-conscious. "It's for someone special." She smirked, clearly unimpressed, and handed me the neatly wrapped box. I didn't care what she thought. I walked out of the store, clutching the gift tightly, and allowed myself to daydream about the evening ahead. Jason had been acting strange lately, distracted, even distant at times, but I brushed it off as stress from running the cafe. Tonight, I was certain he'd make up for it. He always did. When I arrived at the cafe, Judith greeted me with her usual cheerful smile. Judith was more than a colleague, she was my confidant and best friend. She always knew how to lift my spirits, and today was no exception. "Hey, Isla," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Guess who's been MIA all day?" "Jason," I asked, trying to hide my disappointment. "Bingo. Haven't seen him since morning." I frowned but quickly forced a smile. Maybe he was planning a surprise for our anniversary. That would explain his absence. The thought filled me with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The rest of my shift dragged on. Every time the door opened, I hoped it was Jason walking in with flowers or something special. But he never showed. By evening, my anticipation had turned into mild frustration. I had just finished my shift and was getting ready to leave when my phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" I answered. "Is this Isla?" A male voice asked. "Yes." "Who's this?" "This is Liam, Jason's friend. He's at the lounge, completely wasted." "Thought you should know." My stomach dropped. Jason was at a bar? On our anniversary? Anger bubbled inside me, but I decided to go and get him. Maybe he had some reason, though I couldn't imagine what. The lounge was dimly lit, with music so loud it made my chest vibrate. I scanned the room, and my heart sank when I spotted Jason. He wasn't just drinking. He was with her, his ex. I froze, watching as they leaned into each other. And then it happened. She kissed him. No, he kissed her back. Fury and heartbreak exploded within me. My hands trembled as I grabbed the nearest glass of what I assumed was someone's cocktail. Before I could second-guess myself, I marched over and doused them both in the sticky liquid. Jason leapt to his feet, his face a mix of shock and anger. His ex, drenched and glaring at me, looked like she was ready to pounce. "What the hell, Isla?" Jason barked, wiping his face. I ignored his outrage and glared at him. "Do you even know what day it is?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He blinked, confusion flashing across his face. Then, realization dawned. His guilt lasted all of 2 seconds before it was replaced by irritation. "You can't be serious," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Serious?" I spat. "It's our anniversary, Jason. I spent weeks saving for your gift, planning this day, and this is what I get? You with her." I jabbed a finger toward his ex. Jason sighed heavily, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Isla, don't make a scene," he said, lowering his voice. "We both know this relationship wasn't going anywhere." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about?" He glanced at his ex before turning back to me. "I've always seen you as a replacement. You were just there when she wasn't. I tried to make it work, but honestly, it's not enough. You're not enough." The humiliation was unbearable. I felt like everyone in the bar was staring, judging me. His ex decided to chime in, her voice dripping with smugness. "So you're the stand-in?" she said, laughing. "How pathetic. I left him because I went abroad, but now I'm back. You can go back to wherever you came from." Her words were like salt in a wound. My vision blurred with unshed tears, but I refused to let them fall. I straightened my back and looked Jason in the eye. "We're done," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the bar. The cool night air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't enough to numb the pain. I clutched the watch in my hand, the one I'd bought for someone who never truly cared about me. My mind raced with questions, but one thought stood out: how could I have been so blind? As I stood on the sidewalk, trying to collect myself, a thought crossed my mind. Jason may have broken me tonight, but he wouldn't get the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. With trembling hands, I gripped the watch tightly and held it close to me. Jason was my past, but my future. That was up to me. I was POV when I got home, my legs felt heavy as I closed the door behind me. The silence of the apartment was deafening, amplifying the chaos in my mind. I dropped my bag on the floor and sank onto the couch. My hands trembled as I thought about the past year with Jason. How had I been so blind? Now that I had time to think, the signs were glaringly obvious. He was never truly mine. There were moments I'd brushed off, the late-night work meetings, the way he avoided introducing me to his friends, the lack of affection when we were alone. Deep down, I must have known something wasn't right. But I ignored it, convincing myself that he was just stressed or distracted. After all, I loved him, didn't I? And I thought he loved me too. I buried my face in my hands as tears streamed down my cheeks. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was the humiliation of being used. He had played me for a fool, stringing me along while holding on to his feelings for someone else. I thought I knew him. I thought we had something real. I cried myself to sleep that night, my chest aching from the weight of it all. Sometime later, the ringing of my phone jolted me awake. Disoriented, I reached for it. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice hoarse from crying. "Miss Isla, this is Dr. Howard from the hospital. I have good news about your mother's condition," he said, his tone professional but urgent. I sat up immediately, wiping my face. "Really? What's the news?" "We've reviewed her case, and we believe her illness is treatable. The procedure has a high success rate, but it will be expensive. You'll need to make arrangements for the payments soon," he explained. Relief and dread washed over me simultaneously. "Thank you, doctor. I'll find a way to pay." After the call ended, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. How was I supposed to afford this? My part-time job barely covered my tuition and hospital bills, and now I had no job at all? I felt like I was sinking into quicksand, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull myself out. The next morning, I decided to return the watch I had bought for Jason. It was painful to part with something I had picked out with so much love, but it was practical. I needed every penny I could get now. At the mall, I approached the counter and handed over the box. As the salesgirl processed the return, my attention drifted to the counter beside me. A man stood there, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. His sharp features and confident demeanor made him impossible to ignore. He was inspecting the gifts the salesgirl presented, but none seemed to please him. "No, not this one," he said, his tone curt. "It's too plain. Do you have anything better?" The salesgirl fumbled with the items, clearly flustered by his demands. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Rich people, I thought. Always so picky. My muttered remark must have been louder than I intended because he glanced in my direction, his piercing gaze meeting mine. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his lips, but he said nothing. Embarrassed, I quickly looked away, grabbed my receipt and left the store in a hurry. When I got home, I decided it was time to rid myself of all traces of Jason. I gathered everything he had left at my place, shirts, notes, random little trinkets, and stuffed them into a bag. Without a second thought, I carried it to the trash and tossed it in. It felt liberating, like I was taking the first step toward moving on. That evening, I opened my laptop and began searching for jobs online. I needed something that paid well and didn't require years of experience. Hours passed as I scrolled through listings, but nothing seemed promising. My hope was dwindling when an email notification popped up. It was from one of my professors. He mentioned that a company called Sterling Corporation was hiring for an assistant position. My heart skipped a beat. Sterling Corporation wasn't just any company, it was the most successful jewelry company in the industry. I had always dreamed of becoming a renowned designer, and working at Sterling would be a dream come true. If I could get this job, I could not only pay for my mom's treatment but also take a big step toward my future. The excitement was short-lived when my phone rang again. It was the doctor. Miss Isla, I need to remind you that if the payment isn't made by the end of the month, your mother will have to leave the hospital, he said, his tone more urgent this time. I understand, doctor. I'll figure something out, I replied, though I had no idea how. After the call, desperation set in. I started calling everyone I could think of, relatives, friends, even distant acquaintances. But the answers were all the same. I'm sorry, Isla. I wish I could help, but I can't. Days turned into a blur of rejection and disappointment. Every interview I attended ended with the same polite rejection. They didn't want to hire someone fresh out of college, no matter how eager I was to prove myself. Just when I was beginning to lose hope, another email arrived. It was an invitation for an interview at Sterling Corporation. Relief flooded through me. This was my chance. The morning of the interview, I woke up early, choosing my outfit carefully and practicing my responses. I couldn't afford to mess this up. When I arrived at the company, I was in awe of the building's sleek design and the air of sophistication it exuded. I was led to a meeting room, my nerves bubbling under the surface. As I stepped inside, my heart nearly stopped. Sitting at the head of the table, reviewing a file with a focused expression, was the man from the mall. It was him, the sharp, handsome stranger with the picky attitude. Only now, I realized who he was. He wasn't just any rich man, he was the boss of Sterling Corporation. His eyes lifted, locking onto mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. Miss Isla, I presume? He said, his voice calm but commanding. I nodded, my throat dry. What were the chances? Of all the people to interview me, it had to be him. As I sat down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was going to be anything but ordinary. Victor's POV today was Grandpa's 70th birthday. For as long as I could remember, Grandpa had been my anchor, my guide, and my strength. He raised me after my parents passed away when I was just a baby. A man as serious and focused as he was, taking care of a helpless infant must have been a monumental challenge. Yet he did it, and he did it well. Lately, though, I'd been too caught up in work to visit him. Weeks turned into months, and the guilt lingered like a shadow. So, today, I cleared my schedule, canceled a meeting, and made sure nothing came between us. On my way home, I decided to pick up a gift. Grandpa deserved something special. As I stood at the counter in the store, browsing through options, I overheard a complaint from a young lady to the salesgirl. Her voice carried sharpness, but beneath it was an undercurrent of sadness that was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just her tone that caught my attention, it was the weight of her words, each one laced with quiet frustration. Oddly enough, instead of feeling irritated by the scene, I found myself intrigued. She had a slim, elegant frame that moved with an effortless grace, her posture hinting at both confidence and vulnerability. Her features, though delicate, carried a strength that made her impossible to overlook. She walked away, her presence lingered, leaving an unexpected impression I couldn't quite shake. When I finally arrived home, the look on Grandpa's face made the effort worthwhile. You shouldn't have canceled work for this, Victor, he said, smiling warmly. I shook my head and handed him the gift. Nothing is more important than you, Grandpa. You've done too much for me. This is the least I can do. We embraced, and he patted my back like he always did when he wanted to say he was proud of me. The moment of warmth didn't last long. Just as we were settling into the evening's celebration, the doorbell rang. I frowned, wondering who could be interrupting. When I opened the door, 2 police officers stood there, their expressions grim. We're here to take Mr. Thomas into custody, one of them said. He's accused of involvement in a murder case from 25 years ago. I froze. What? This has to be some sort of mistake. Grandpa stepped forward, his calm demeanor unshaken. Victor, let them do their job. I have nothing to hide. But I couldn't just stand by. My chest tightened as they led him away. Without wasting a second, I called Daniel, my best friend and a trusted police officer. Daniel, I said, Grandpa's been arrested for murder. You have to help me. His voice was firm but reassuring. I'll look into it right away, Victor. Just stay calm. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. Grandpa wasn't capable of murder, he wasn't capable of hurting anyone. There had to be some kind of misunderstanding or a setup. The next morning, I called my secretary and ordered him to dig into the case. I need every detail, I told him. Anything that might clear Grandpa's name. He worked tirelessly, and after a few hours, he finally had some information. Victor, he said, placing a file on my desk, the daughter of the deceased is applying for an assistant position at Sterling Corporation. Curious, I opened the file and froze when I saw the photo. It was her, the girl from the store. The one whose fiery attitude had caught my attention. I decided to personally attend her interview. This was unusual for me. I rarely joined entry-level hiring processes, and my presence caused some surprise. Mr. Victor, one of the interviewers whispered, "You've never joined these interviews before." I ignored the comment, focusing on the young woman sitting across from us. Her name was Isla Morgan. There was something captivating about her, the way she sat confidently yet with a trace of nervousness in her eyes. "I'm sorry, sir," he said when he noticed my silence to his comment. "Ms. Morgan," I began, "why do you think you're the right person for this job?" She looked directly at me, her gaze steady, as though she wasn't intimidated by the power imbalance in the room. "I don't have office experience, but I've worked in a busy coffee shop for 2 years. There, I learned how to manage time, solve problems, and handle different types of people. It taught me to be strong and flexible, and I believe these skills will help me in this job." Her voice was calm and collected, but there was a certain warmth in her tone that made me want to hear more. Another interviewer frowned. "You've never worked in a company before. How will you handle the pressure here?" She smiled faintly, her lips curling ever so slightly. "I'm used to pressure. Serving impatient customers during the morning rush and keeping everything under control has taught me to stay calm and get things done. I'm confident I can do the same here." I found myself intrigued, not just by her words but by her demeanor. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she was being herself. "What would you do," I asked, "if we gave you a task you don't know how to do?" Her lips parted slightly as she thought, and for a brief moment, I noticed how her eyes softened. "I'd take the time to learn and research it. If I needed help, I'd ask. I believe the only way to grow is by taking on new challenges and learning from them." Her answer was practical, but the quiet passion in her voice made it feel personal. She wasn't just answering a question, she was revealing a part of herself. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I asked, leaning forward slightly, curious about her response. Her expression shifted, a subtle vulnerability crossing her features. "I see myself as someone who has grown in my career and as a person. I want to make a difference wherever I work and prove that hard work pays off." There was something unspoken in her words, something that hinted at a deeper story. I wanted to know what it was, and that thought alone caught me off guard. When the interview ended, I stood and shook her hand. Her touch was soft yet firm, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to slow. "Thank you, Ms. Morgan. We'll be in touch," I said, my voice quieter than usual. As she left the room, her perfume lingered, a delicate, sweet scent that stayed with me. I turned to the panel. "Hire her," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. One of them hesitated. "Sir, there are others with more experience." "I said hire her," I repeated firmly, cutting them off. As I watched her walk away through the glass panel, I felt an unfamiliar pull. Isla Morgan wasn't just another candidate, she was something more. I couldn't quite put it into words, but I knew one thing, I wasn't going to let her fade into the background. Later that day, I told Daniel about the coincidence. "Hire her," he suggested. "If her father was the victim, she might know something about the case." "I already did," I said. But my reasons weren't purely investigative. There was something about Isla that intrigued me on a personal level. Maybe it was the fire in her eyes or the way she carried herself with quiet strength. This was only the beginning. I was determined to uncover the truth about Grandpa's case, and somehow, I felt that Isla might hold the key. Isla's POV. The day I got the job offer from Sterling Corporation felt like the first ray of sunlight after a storm. It was more than a job, it was my ticket to a better future, and save my mom's life. The first person I wanted to share the news with was Judith. I headed to the cafe where I used to work before everything fell apart. Walking into that place brought mixed emotions. Jason owned the cafe, and seeing him there was inevitable. Still, I had news worth celebrating, and I wouldn't let anything dampen my spirits. Judith was behind the counter when I arrived. She spotted me and waved me over with a big smile. "Isla, what's the occasion? You look like you've won the lottery." I grinned, unable to hold back my excitement. "Judith, I got the job at Sterling Corporation." Her eyes widened with delight, and she leaned over the counter to hug me. "I knew it. I knew they'd see how amazing you are. This calls for a celebration. Coffee's on me." Before I could reply, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "So, Sterling Corporation? Planning to seduce your way to the top?" I froze. Jason. Of course, he would ruin this moment. I turned to see him leaning against the counter, his smirk as irritating. "Go away, Jason," Judith snapped, stepping in to defend me. But Jason wasn't done. "I'm just curious. Didn't take you long to bounce back, huh? What's the plan this time, Isla? Target a rich boss?" His words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. I squared my shoulders and looked him in the eye. "Not everyone needs to manipulate people to succeed, Jason. Some of us actually work for what we want." Judith added, "And some of us know when to leave. Don't you have a business to run?" Jason chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Fine. Enjoy your little moment, Isla. Let's see how long it lasts." He walked away, leaving me seething. Judith placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Don't let him get to you. You're better than this." I nodded, forcing a smile. "I know. He's not worth it." But deep down, his words lingered, a reminder of the pain he had caused. The following morning, I arrived at Sterling Corporation for my first day. The sleek office building was intimidating, but I pushed aside my nerves and stepped inside. As I was navigating the hallways, I accidentally bumped into a woman dressed like a runway model. Her sharp eyes assessed me with disdain, her lips curling into a mocking smirk. "So, you're the boss's new favorite pet," she said with a sneer, her tone dripping with condescension. "Did he pick you from a charity auction or just drag you in off the streets?" Her words caught me off guard, but I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." She raised a perfectly manicured hand, silencing me. "Save it. Don't think you can climb your way to the top just because you landed this job. Women like you don't last long here. You're a dime a dozen." Her sharp words stung, but I forced myself to remain calm. "I'm here to work, not cause trouble," I replied quietly. She let out a harsh laugh, her gaze raking over me. "Work? Please. The only skill you'll need around here is knowing how to follow orders. Let's hope you're good at that." With that, she turned and strutted away, her heels clicking against the polished floor as if to punctuate her superiority. A colleague nearby leaned in and whispered, "That's Emma, our top designer. She's brilliant, but she's obsessed with the boss. Everyone knows she wants to be more than just an employee. Now that you're his assistant, you're her new target. Good luck, you'll need it." "Great," I muttered under my breath, swallowing the lump of frustration forming in my throat. Then, with a quiet, sarcastic edge, I added, "Must be hard carrying that ego around all day." Emma returned, holding a cup of coffee. Her glare was icy, and I could tell she had overheard me talking to the colleague. "I don't care what you think of me," she snapped. "But if you insult me again, you'll regret it." Before I could respond, she shoved me against the wall. The commotion must have caught someone's attention because the next thing I knew, Victor, my new boss, appeared. His sharp gaze landed on Emma. "Emma, that's enough," he said sternly. She stepped back, flustered, and muttered an apology before hurrying away. Victor turned to me. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my heart was racing. "Come to my office," he instructed. Once we were seated, he handed me a notepad and began listing some work-related precautions. I scribbled down everything, grateful for the distraction from the earlier incident. Then, he surprised me by asking, "What do you think of Emma?" I hesitated. "I don't have an opinion. I just want to do my job and get promoted." For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw disappointment in his eyes. But why would he care? The next morning, Victor called a team meeting. His professionalism and commanding presence were undeniable, and I found myself admiring how effortlessly he led the discussion. Emma, however, wasn't done with her antics. After the meeting, she cornered me in the conference room. "You think you're so special because you're the assistant," she sneered. "I'm not here to argue," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But she wasn't interested in peace. She suddenly raised her voice, accusing me of slapping her. "What are you talking about?" I exclaimed, stunned. Before the situation could escalate, Victor appeared again. His timing was almost too perfect. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Emma stammered, trying to play the victim, but Victor wasn't having it. "Emma, I've warned you once. This behavior won't be tolerated." His words caught me off guard. For the first time, I wondered if maybe he wasn't like the other rich men I had encountered. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Victor: "Let me take you out to dinner to apologize." I stared at the text, my heart pounding. What did he really want? Victor's POV. When Isla accepted my invitation to dinner, I felt a wave of happiness wash over me, though I did my best to hide it. It wouldn't do to let my feelings show too soon. Over the meal, I opened up about something that had been bothering her: why I tolerated Emma's attitude so much. Her father was my father's driver, I explained, my voice calm and steady. They both died in the same car accident. Isla's face softened, her expression tinged with understanding. Emma does have talent, but her temper has always been a problem. I try to overlook it as long as she doesn't go too far. I noticed Isla's demeanor shift. She seemed to regret judging Emma so harshly before hearing the whole story. In that moment, something between us changed. She no longer seemed as guarded, and I felt a small victory in earning her trust. Later that evening, after returning home, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel, his tone serious as he shared an update on the investigation. "Victor, we've hit a snag. We need more information. You might need to get closer to Isla, she could have answers we're looking for." The conflict in my heart grew stronger. On one hand, I genuinely liked Isla. There was something about her that pulled me in, and I wanted to bring us closer. But on the other hand, my grandfather's reputation and freedom depended on this investigation. My family came first. After a long moment of reflection, I made my decision. I needed to test Isla. To put my plan into motion, I arranged a business trip for just the two of us. It was the perfect opportunity to spend time with her and ask subtle questions about her past. Isla took charge of booking the flights and accommodations. When she informed me of the arrangements, she hesitated. "There was only one room left at the hotel you requested," she said. So I reserved a room at a nearby hotel for myself. I felt a pang of disappointment, though I quickly brushed it off. Why did it bother me so much? I had to remind myself that this trip wasn't about romance, it was about uncovering the truth. The business trip went smoothly, and we managed to secure the contract we came for. To celebrate, I suggested we go shopping, using the excuse, "You're the lucky charm for this deal." She looked at me suspiciously but eventually agreed. Truthfully, I wasn't sure how to treat a woman properly. Growing up wealthy, I had always relied on gestures of affluence to impress others. It was all I knew. Later that evening, I decided to show her a more personal side of me. I took her to my favorite local bar, a place I rarely shared with others. As we sat with drinks in hand, I carefully steered the conversation toward her family. Her cheerful demeanor faded the moment she mentioned her father. Her voice grew quiet, and I could see the pain in her eyes. I felt a pang of guilt for pressing her, but I needed answers. Hoping to coax more from her, I tried a subtle trick, pretending to share my own struggles to encourage her to open up. But instead of talking, she drank. One drink after another until she was visibly drunk. When it became clear she'd had too much, I decided to take her back to my room at the hotel. Carrying her felt surprisingly intimate, though I tried to push the thought aside. This was about looking after her, not anything else. After settling her on the bed, I sat in the armchair across the room, watching her for a moment. Alcohol had brought a flush to her cheeks, and her soft breathing made her look so vulnerable. I'd never thought I'd meet someone like her, someone who stirred feelings I'd long buried. There was something so genuine about her, something that made me want to protect her. The thought of leaning closer crossed my mind, but I stopped myself. No, I wasn't that kind of man. She deserved respect, not to be taken advantage of. With that resolve, I covered her with a blanket and retreated to the couch to spend the night. The next morning, Isla woke with a start. Her eyes darted around the room before landing on me. Confusion turned to alarm, and she sat up quickly. "What happened?" she asked, her voice shaky. "You got drunk," I said calmly, standing to give her space. "I brought you back here to make sure you were safe." Her cheeks flushed red as she processed my words. "Did we?" "No," I interrupted firmly. "Nothing happened. I wouldn't do that to you." Relief washed over her face, though she still looked embarrassed. She mumbled a thank you before getting up to gather her things. As I stepped into the bathroom, I watched her carefully. Something told me this trip had changed things between us. But whether it was for better or worse, I couldn't yet tell.